Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage, and we are in southwestern Missouri doing some digging, and we were lucky enough to be invited onto a property to purchase a lifetime collection of early Ford, old racing parts, and this car right here is one of our main things. So this car is an original Roaring Roadster. So this is a T Roadster from the 40s that would have raced during a time when the racing regulations were very loose, and it was a very dangerous but exciting time in dirt racing. This is an original race car that Leland has had. He bought it from one of the original first couple people that owned the car, and he's had it for many, many years, and we had the opportunity to buy this car, dig out the car, and luckily enough, he has kept all the parts basically from this car how it was when he first got it. And we're going to dig this thing out, get it in the truck, and take it home, and we're going to tell you a little bit about the history along the way.
History was a used car man in Coffeyville, Kansas, McCann Motors, had owned that car, and I think a Chrysler Healy, and he just had an exhibition one time when they were running Saturday night at the Coffeyville Fairgrounds. And the guy from Carthage drove that car, and the guy from Pittsburgh, Kansas drove the Healy. Of course, there was no contest, but it wasn't intended to be.
Yeah.
And he ended up buying the car to get the engine to put in his coupe. And that's the whole history of the whole thing.
It looks like they built a custom hood for the...
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's all there.
Yeah, it looks like it. And when you raced it, you had a flathead V8?
Yeah, but it's the one you're getting over there.
Okay.
It's
Yep.
got the aluminum heads on it.
Okay.
You know, that's the engine. It's 7/16 before.
Okay, and you pulled the body off and just had a cage?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we had that till about a year ago, but you could have it too, but it's gone.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's okay. We like the early version. Now, do you remember anything about where the car raced or originally was from?
I never saw the Roadsters run, but I thought it was out of Wichita because they had aircraft bolts and stuff in it, but somebody told me that this man in Coffeyville bought all his cars out of Kansas City, so I truly don't know.
Okay.
If you get a hold of somebody in Kansas City that would know, they...
And Brian was telling us, what was the nickname of the car? Was there...
the Blue Jay Special, and that's floating from the air. I'm not sure how that all come about. I guess that's why I thought that and the aircraft bolts, little bitty bolts, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
I assumed it came out of Wichita. That was the aircraft industry.
Okay.
But then somebody later said McCann got all his cars out of Kansas City, so I truly don't know.
Okay. And the drive line behind it, it had...
It's down in there, the over and under box. They made everything. In fact, I think they built the car with an acetylene torch. I'm not making fun now. That's what guys had.
Yeah.
You'll see it when you get it out of the
Okay,
line.
but so it had an over-under box.
They made it, yeah.
Yep.
They had a jack. They took a jack shaft out of transmission and put a flange on it. You bolted it to the crank, and then you'll see how it goes together.
Yep.
And I can just see somebody in his little garage used to working away building that thing.
And then it had a stock type rear that was flipped.
Yeah, flip the center section.
Okay, so because it ran backwards
Yeah.
then. Yep. And then when you got it, you put a starter on it with a trans and
the quick change.
and you put the Halbrand quick change in.
And I need to tell you something about that quick change before I forget it. That's got 49 Mercury ends on the axles.
Okay.
And when the left one, the driver's side axle went in, it went in hard. I think I've got something misaligned. You might want to look for that.
Okay.
In fact, there's another 49 Mercury end over there if you need it. But another thing, they're starting to twist axles. You know, they started doing that when they got some horsepower.
Yep.
In them. And so instead of locking up the spider gears, I welded those side axle gears. One was to the ring gear and the other was to the housing. So, because if I broke an axle, I wanted to be able to drive it out. Well,
Yes.
The left one didn't go in as smooth as the right one, so I just want you to know that.
Okay. Well, we'll have to take it all. Well, it's all going to come apart and get.
Yeah, I thought it would, but just expect that left axle will be hard to pull.
I appreciate that. That's very cool. So you drove it how many times? One time.
Yeah, that was a strange thing. It was a season championship, and I didn't know that. And it started me on the front row of a heat race, and the thing didn't weigh anything. And I won the heat race, so that put me on the front row of the trophy dash, and I won that. They would give me a trophy. What they said was it was championship night, and they weren't giving a trophy. I found out later they were, but I understood. He couldn't have a strange car come in and take their stuff home. And I didn't mind that at all.
Yeah.
Never dreamed of winning the feature. In fact, we were 16, 17 laps into the feature. I was still leading it. And the guy passed me and they had a caution, so I assumed he must have knocked somebody out of the way because he was a lot faster than I was.
Oh.
If he went to the back, he never had another chance. But I thought, Leland, this flathead Ford is not going to make it.
And you
won the feature, yeah.
And you were were you the only flathead engine on the track?
The only flathead engine.
That's pretty cool that you were beating overhead valve engines. So you've had the car. It's used to sit outside at the other.
It sat outside a long time.
At the other property.
Yes.
Okay. Because I think Brian sent me a photo when he was little, standing next to it.
It's been outside a lot.
And how long did you finally bring it in and start tinkering around with the engine and stuff again?
Well, that was a long time before I came here.
Oh, okay.
We started tinkering with the engine in 07, I think. It was about the time it was around that time, that era.
No, I think you're talking about working on the 6-cylinder.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. You think it was about 07?
It was about 07. I was down here for a long summer, just gotten out of middle school.
Okay, and you were helping him work on it.
That was the whole point of the thing, was to get him doing things.
Yeah.
And something interfered, and that's how far we got.
Yep. This is important, obviously.
I assume you'd want that.
Yeah, anything for the Roadster work. Got the little fuel rail there for it. Homemade.
Dad, just stand right over here.
Probably work better. What'd you find back there?
This is where the original Cyclone head for the 6-cylinder. Got it?
No problem.
I gotta get intimate with this engine.
Well, you work all day. You go out there and work till 10 o'clock every night. You're learning skills, but you're not skilled at it. Not to mention all the tools you have to buy because you don't have the tools. It doesn't cost. I don't know how you can buy tools. Because these tools were designed to work on the cool stuff. You got to make spikes up there.
I got it.
Yeah. Slide it there. Stop.
Okay, I'm not going to help you now. That was way too easy. I lay it down. Put it over there.
Oh, we gotta lay it on the pan. You can't lay it there.
Now let's have somebody.
Feels like we're stuck.
Good here. We are going to be stuck here in a second. The bottom out? Yep.
That is a strong piece of...
More lift. Here we go.
That was a strong piece of metal under there.
Hell yeah, it is.
All right, so we need somebody at the bottom again.
It won't pop off now. The car's holding the ramp still now.
You guys all right?
Yep.
I don't got shit.
Let it go. We got it.
Look how easy that is.
I will say I did not have faith in that word.
What?
That wasn't sketchy at all.
If you could stand on that thing, it was plenty.
Well, it might be easier on the concrete.
Picking up. That's All right, so we got our prize, so to speak, unloaded after spending half a day or more, a little more unloading the box truck of all the parts and stuff we got. We're going to show you guys a little bit of the car here to round out the video. In the earlier parts of the video, we were in such a rush to get everything loaded, we didn't really get to look at the car or show you guys on video. So the car was at a newer property, so that this car sat outside for many, many years, and they have a bunch of neat old photos that we showed you earlier in the video of this car sitting outside and different things. They moved the car into the new property, which was right down the street, and that's where the car was. And then the engine and a lot of the parts were still at the old property that he had stored inside for many years. And as we brought it all together here unloading, we can kind of piece together the story of what Leland was telling us and what he had done to the car. So one of the things is this thing was bored pretty far. So
a good bit.
It was, I think, a little under 3 1/8 was original bore, roughly. And this is a JE 3 7/16 piston. So Leland and his grandson were actually working on this engine a little bit during the COVID shutdown. Those guys, for a project, were starting to tinker, and they had pulled out some of the parts, got the engine freed up. Leland had the rods and pistons all balanced. He said that actually 3 of the pistons were like a lot heavier than the other pistons and rods, so he had them all matched, so they are all balanced together, and everything, as you can see, is really clean. So we just set one here for you guys to see. So the cool thing, this thing ran a straight 6, obviously. Now the thing that's kind of interesting about this car is me doing some research in anticipation of getting this car. Roadster racing was kind of a short period of time, so it was like mainly during like the 40s, mid 40s, on to like a lot of states. It seems like the early 50s they stopped racing these Roadsters, and they went on to different cars, like normal stock cars like you would expect with roofs. So this engine was only made from 41 to 51. So this was basically like a brand new engine, so to speak, or a very relatively new engine when it was hot rodded. We were kind of looking at the engine when we were loading it up, and it's got some neat stuff on it. So number one, it's bored pretty far. Number two, it has a Clay Smith cam in it. So doing some research, again, as we had a very long time to drive home from Missouri, Clay Smith seemed to, in the 40s, I think it was, he took over the business, or the 30s, he took over the business, he was grinding cams. This is stamped Clay Smith, so this is a cam that was probably from the same era. We don't know what the grind is of it. We have to look it up and see. But it has a Clay Smith cam in it. It has adjustable tappets in the side here. So, of course, with the cam, you really need the adjustable tappets. So it's pretty cool that it has all these parts with it. Again, we got the rotating assembly. It has an aluminum flywheel on it, which is pretty, unusual or hard to find for these 6 cylinders. They were not very popular like the V8s were. So to see speed equipment for these things is pretty unusual, especially when you get into something that's more than just bolt-on parts. So over here is some of the stuff we'll go through and show you guys, stuff we got with the car. So aluminum timing gear that was on it. So the engine originally, when Leland got it, it had this over-under box, like an in and out box, but it changed the rotation of the engine, or the drive line, and they actually had a rear, which we don't have here, a 32 rear that was flipped.
I need to mark that so we don't accidentally sell it to somebody.
Let's not do that, because they'll be mad when it's like upside down. So it was flipped upside down to spin the opposite way because of the way this in and out box was, and they had this actually bolted to the back of the crankshaft of the engine, and this is the jack shaft. And luckily enough, Leland tagged a lot of the stuff as he was going through it or taking it apart. And then it has this gear here. This is one of the gears that would go inside of there, and then you would just put it, like a normal in and out box. You just drop it in the gear and you would drive it, and then the top speed was whatever that ring and pinion was with the tires is what you would get. So this didn't even have a quick change in it originally. It just had this kind of homebrew setup. So it's kind of cool. You can see this is something that somebody welded together, but they cut it off and welded it in there on both sides. Pretty neat. Then we have the homebrew headers here. So we were going through the pipes. There is these long pipes that are really bitchin' that would go down the side of the car, and there's a little bolt where this would mount on the Nerf bar. We kind of held that up with these headers, and it doesn't really line up. So there must be I'm guessing, 2 types of exhaust. There's these headers here which are, had a lot of brazing. They have just as much, I think, rod or filler metal on this as they do actual like tubing. And then there's these downpipes that came right out the side. So there's this exhaust, but we think there must have been some kind of other exhaust, because this is all meant for the car and goes on the side, lines up in the Nerf bars, but doesn't line up with those pipes there. So we have to kind of figure that out. I really like these pipes. That's one of those things when you look at the old photos of the early Roadsters that were racing, a lot of them had those pipes down the side in the early Dry Lakes cars. So I'm glad that we got that. So now into the exciting stuff. So speed equipment freaks, the rare stuff is always like what's really exciting. So this has a Cyclone head, finned head on it, that is made for those pop-up pistons. And you can actually see that the head is in really, really good shape. Like overall, I don't think this thing was run a ton because of, the engine was fairly new when it was run, and then the car probably didn't run as a Roadster anymore into the early 50s, so it probably wasn't run all that much. I don't see any major damage or anything scary on this. In fact, it's pretty darn good. I mean, you see the carbon, it's still greasy, so it's really nice that Leland kept all this stuff. He raced the car with a V8 that we actually got with the car as well. So he took all this stuff off and actually kept it, in good shape, and it didn't get broken, damaged. Even the water manifold that somebody made is still in really good shape. So that's included there. So we have that. Then the intake is a Knudsen 3 single carburetors. So he uses, I guess those were probably the straight 6, just 3 of those carburetors. But what's neat that I want to show you guys is it has these little air cleaners on it. If you look on the hood that was custom made for this car with the track nose, is it has this box here where I think the air cleaners probably just poke up above, I'm guessing. And we didn't mock it up yet, but that's really cool that, the hood and then the cowl was actually cut back for the last carburetor. If you look down that hole there, it was cut in. So that's pretty cool that they all the pieces that were for that engine with this car stayed with it. So that's some of that stuff. We found 2 of these seats, but I think this is actually the one that was in the car, judging by the age. We found 2 bomber seats on the property. One was a little later. There was an aluminum one that may or may not have been in the car, but looked more like a 60s era or 50s era one. And then we found this one. It's definitely an earlier style. We found all these old racing belts, which are, always cool. They're old when they got the chain that was bolted to the frame. But we got all these old belts with the car, which is cool. And then we got the old bomber seat that obviously, this is an older one. So we will, we're gonna go through and see. I don't know if it's, this one or the other seat were the one, but this one kind of looks like it might have been. We got the Nerf bars with the car. The other one's on the other side. We can show you that would have went inside of the car. And this is the original radiator, so I was really happy that Leland still had this because, when they make those track noses, they make a radiator to match it, and if you don't have the radiator, it's kind of hard to, figure it out. So this is a radiator that's made for the 6-cylinder, and this is some kind of homebrew type radiator. I'm not sure what this side piece is. That looks like a factory Ford part. But there is a kind of hoop in the car that Mike noticed that this sits down in and probably bolts in there. This is quite a large radiator for these cars. Usually when they have those track noses, the radiators end up only being the size of the track nose. So this must have hung, well, actually not must, it definitely hung down low. You can see the little hoop down there where that thing sat. So the body is so it's obviously a Roadster type body. They welded up the door on the other side. So these cars originally only had one door, and they welded the door up. Again, we showed you the hood. The track nose is aluminum, and on the inside of the grill, there's all these pie cuts where they just kind of brought everything together. So it's not a real, the track nose itself isn't a real high quality one, because some of the ones you see from California that were done, they were hand hammered from one piece. This one they actually pie cut and welded it back up. Regardless, it's pretty cool looking. I
It
like
does have an aggressive look with the.
yeah, and I like how they kind of brought it out around here. So it's got a cool look to it. It's neat on the inside to see all the hammer marks and everything from them make it. The hood is aluminum. The box for the carbs is aluminum and is all welded around it. So this
Very, very thin aluminum,
yeah,
too.
it's very thin aluminum. There's like nothing to it. So it's from years of being sitting around, it's like out of shape, and we're gonna have to line up all the mounting holes to get everything to mount together. It's got an aluminum dash. Leland told us it had a little like plexiglass type half round windshield here, and that was all it had. And then it's cut for 4 gauges there, which is pretty cool. Again, pretty thin aluminum. They tubed out the whole edge of the body, which is common for these Roadsters. When you start taking all the wood out of it, there's nothing left, so they weld in tubing all the way around. This is much like we did with the Free T when we built that. They do all that stuff. There's tubing down at the bottom here that is welded all around, and it actually sits on pins. So the body is really easy and quick to remove. Other than the shocks in the rear that you can see, once you take the shocks off, you can lift this whole
Actually,
thing up.
It's loose right now, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's nothing. They actually have the turtle deck is welded to the body.
Oh.
So you could take the whole body off, boom, in one shot. So for working on this thing, it would have been really easy. You could have just, like I said, take the shocks off or the shock links off, take the body off, and boom, you have full access to anything if you break or need to work on anything. So the steering setup is a Franklin steering box. So that was a common steering box that you would see used in these cars. It's converted to center steer. You can see the crazy linkage that's set up here that I think Leland said he did when he raced it. So it's got an old SP waffle gas pedal in it. He said he made that perforated metal in the bottom he put on there. It does have a brake pedal in it here with a little master cylinder, and there's a pedal down here. I see that there is linkage for a flathead clutch here.
Oh, yeah.
So there's the rotating part that's for like a V8 clutch setup, probably was hooked up when he was running a V8. So I don't know if there was, I'm guessing there was probably a hand clutch, probably a lever that came up here, and they just pulled on the hand clutch to put it in the gear, because once you're racing, especially with having an in and out box, they just put the clutch in to put it in and you're off and going. So that's probably what that was set up for. The frame is stepped in the rear. It looks like it's a Model T frame that's in this, and the frame is stepped in the rear. So it actually steps up quite a bit. That's what gets it to sit low. And you will notice, we get yelled at all the time in the videos, why don't you box the frames? Everybody box frames. This car was running a straight 6 with a Model T frame. It is not boxed. I'm not saying that that's okay, but that was a common
There's
thing.
also shark bites out
Yeah,
there.
the shark bites are not good. That's a little dangerous. But that just goes to show that, like, the boxing the frame thing was done some, but on a lot of these earlier cars, they didn't box the frame. They just ran it as is, and it flexed and was what it was. But this thing held up, surprisingly, so that's really good. We did find the roll bar, which is pretty cool. Like, it's actually done surprisingly well. So I don't know if they scavenged this from somewhere and then they just punched the holes to match, or if they knew somebody that could bend this tubing. It was obviously done like in a machine, you know, and it's heavy. This is heavy wall tubing. This isn't exhaust. This is like really thick tubing that they put in there, and then there's a bar to mount it to the frame. So I was really happy to find this, because this is part of the look of these track Roadsters. Oh, I forgot to mention, anybody that's watched our videos and knows the 2020 challenge, they will know what this steering wheel is pretty good. It's a Pontiac accessory banjo steering wheel from, like, I don't know if it was 37.8, somewhere in that realm. Quite valuable. Now this wheel obviously sat outside for many years, so it's pretty darn rough. But we're gonna leave that wheel in it because it's what the car had. May just wrap it up with some like friction tape, just so it doesn't fall apart in my hands. But pretty cool that it has that like really rare wheel. So just goes to show they just used whatever they had laying around on the car. And let's see. Leland added actually on this car has a Haldebrand quick change on it, 201 or V8 style quick change on it. That's in the back. Leland said that he has Mercury. He has a Mercury axles in this. He took apart a Mercury rear end from like a 4950 Merc, and he used the drop-in axles and parts from that in this. So it looks like it actually has the Mercury brakes on it. These aren't the normally early Ford brakes that are on it. It's a later style brakes. And it has some rack.
face of the axle too.
Yeah. So it's got drop-in axles on it. I'm sure that it's set up with a spool. You know.
Oh, it does. Remember we tried to turn it on the dollies and they kicked out? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not happy about that. But this is an early Culver City rear. So for this stuff, like that's kind of the dream for this early stuff is to have those parts on it. So you know it's kind of crusty looking from sitting out in his yard for a while. It's actually really solid. There's a little bit of rot and some little edges, but like considering the set outside for 40 years, 50 years, something, I don't know, 30, I don't know. Yeah.
A long time.
Very long time, because we have a photo of it sitting outside that's already like looks weathered, I think in the 70s with, I misspoke in the other video, it was the cousin that was actually helping us with the tractor. It was him when he was a little kid. He's, I don't know, I'm going to guess in his 50s now.
Yeah.
So that car didn't stay outside a long time, but it actually held up pretty good. It has this little aluminum deck lid that they made for it that goes around.
Needs a little work.
Yeah, the design was not the best here. So this, it's going to need some help.
It also was in a box truck for a while.
But you can see the deck lid is like literally just a piece of metal they bent up. But it's got the little gas tank in the back. You can see how the shocks were mounted. This was common. Sideways. Oh, the jacker bolt. That's very common that you would see the jacker bolt so that they would, you know, jack it down when it was to limit the suspension going around the corners. So this is all stuff I'm seeing for the first time. I never even opened this up.
I think I opened it when we put it in the truck because I thought I could put some parts back here. And then I opened it, was like, never mind.
Yeah, so the frame stepped up quite a bit in the back there to get it sitting right. And it has this old gas tank. A lot of this stuff, like these old gas tanks, it's going to be hard for me to probably use it because it's probably all corroded inside. But we will see. We'll try to save as much as we can on the car. Rear bumper here, which is all bent up. Let's see. You can see here's the Nerf bar. I like these little. It's actually like the trim rings. Like this car was probably a pretty high-end car in its time. Having some of this stuff on it and having the aluminum hood and all of that, I think it was a pretty high-end car, you know, compared to a lot of the other stuff you see. There was something bolted. Oh, that was the belly pan.
Oh, that's behind us.
Where is that?
Right there.
Oh yeah. Here's the belly pan that we're guessing was, you know, that was on it. And you can see, I don't know if that's an old oil can. But it says
our engine.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It probably says your engine. I think that's a Y there.
It's an old. I think we think it's an old oil can that they just bent around it. So the belly pan is pretty neat. So we have most of the major parts on this thing. 15-inch wheels, which you know we can just get whatever tires for. And then it's got this cool Nerf bar style bumper in the front. And common with a lot of these cars that ran no front brakes. And it's actually just a stock like Model A axle that it has on it. So it doesn't have some crazy drop axle or anything like that. That seemed to be more of a street car thing. Another thing you would see is they turned the cross member in the front there.
I didn't even notice that.
That was a common trick they would do. You take the stock front cross member, you cut it off, and then you turn it
on end,
and then you have your suicide front mount for your spring. So pretty neat stuff. This is stuff that I like read about and seen in photos, but haven't owned a car that had it. We also noticed these. I don't know if they were aftermarket parts for the tie rods here.
Oh yeah.
We thought that they were something that they welded up, but the more we were looking at it, we think that it might actually been a part you could buy. So it's like a drop tie rod setup that they're stacked on top of each other, and it almost looks like they were cast that way or forged or whatever. But it's kind of nice because it drops the tie rod down to get it away from the wishbones and everything. So. And then, this is pretty homemade. We saw this, like the shock arm. They cut another shock arm and welded it on. So there's going to be a ton of that stuff we're going to find as we're working on it. I don't really know what we're going to find on this thing, but it's pretty cool. Our goal with this car is hopefully to put it back together and make it a fun little rip around. Like race car again, basically. So there's a lot of neat little roundy round type nostalgia races here. We have some local dirt drags and things like that. There's a lot of those types of events now going on around the country, and it'd be cool to have a car that we can do that with. This is kind of borderline not being able to street this car anymore without changing what it was. So we're going to try and keep it in that realm. We'll see as we go through the car and find out. But it's really cool to have an original like 40s track tee Roaring Roadster. Is really, really neat to have one of these. I've never, had the chance to buy one, so really, really awesome. So thank you to Leland and Brian and the whole entire family for letting us come out, dig through all the parts, and number two, letting us have the chance to purchase this car and all this stuff and get the parts out into people's hands to build more cars and hopefully put another piece of old early hot rodding and racing history back on the road or back on the track. So thank you guys for following along, really appreciate it. Let me know what you think down below about the car, and if you know anyone that might know some history about this car, please pass this on to them or let them see this video and share it around, and maybe we could find some old photos or history of this car racing around in the Midwest. Thank you guys. Catch you later.